Yes, recording in progress, the voice from the machine tells me, and I'm delighted that I will progress alongside Pat McArt if I can keep up with his nimble brain. How are you this morning, Pat, and how's your brain?
One thing I've never been accused of is having a nimble brain. In fact, I don't have a nimble anything. Like, Jude, there are certain people born to be nimble and look small. There's five brothers in our house, and every one of us is about 6 foot tall and about twice the size of what we really should be.
I don't know about that. It's a great advantage. That's a great advantage. Women like tall men, and secondly, being tall and big, you're less likely when you're young to get into fights because people.
The only advantage, Jude, I ever saw from being sort of big was nobody ever tried to bully me because I was useless anyway. But they didn't know that.
Well, that's a lot of people's reputation is built on that kind of thing, just a little. Okay, enough of such idle banter. Let's have a look at some of the stories. And the woman of the day, of course, is Liz Truss, because apparently she's home and hosed. Would you concur with that, Pat?
Yeah, well, on the 5th of September, she will apparently be crowned as the new Prime Minister of Britain. But Jude,
Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
And by the way, I noticed that during the European Athletics Championship, the relay team, every time he said it was this is the relay team of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Despite the fact that there was no Northern Ireland people in it, as far as I know.
But anyway, Liz Truss will now be the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
Or more accurately, the disunited kingdom. But apparently, as you said, to use your term, she's home and hosed, apparently, and so on. But Jude, something? What's that old thing? You be careful about what you wish for. Like, this is a woman, right? First of all, I wrote some of it down. She got less in the original voting. She only got only 50 out of 357 MPs voted for her, which was 14%. So
how many voted for Sunak then?
I can't remember. I didn't write that down. But anyway, and the final round, only 113 MPs voted for, which is 32%. So in other words, the vast majority didn't vote for her at all. So she's coming in. She hasn't been elected by the country. She hasn't been elected by MPs, but she's been elected by this sort of old stale and mail constituency of Tory voters. Now, and on top of that, hey Jude, when you look at it like this, right, she's coming in to rampant inflation. She's coming into the energy costs that are spiraling out of control. She's coming into increasing difficulties with the EU, and she's coming in with the war in Ukraine still rumbling away in the background. How lucky can you get?
Well, she says that she promised she would face down Putin, which sounded like she might go to an arm wrestling contest with him. Yeah. She is in a sticky wicket because actually, in a way, she faces something similar to Jeremy Corbyn, something slightly similar. Similar in the sense that a lot of the MPs in her party will be opposed to her being in charge. Second thing I would say is that she's being a sort of a mini Johnson. She's modeling herself on Johnson or even.
Why do you say that? Why are you saying she's modeling herself on Johnson?
Because Johnson said you will get Brexit done and she's going to get this thing sorted. And it's all this. If you look at the way she talks, people have described her as being Boris Johnson in a dress. She's as right wing as possible. She's going to keep the ERG as happy as can possibly be. I think she thinks she's going to be another Johnson. She'll certainly need to be able to establish her authority on her team of MPs. A lot of whom I think will be saying two things. One is, in some ways, I wish we had Johnson back because he was a scoundrel, but he was quite an able scoundrel in facing down her enemies. I'm not sure that she will put the fear of God in anybody on the international stage. Do you think, or am I right? Is that too hard on her to say that?
I think
misogyny?
Yeah, I think she's coming in on a very weak basis. I don't see how she doesn't to repeat myself. She doesn't have the country, and she doesn't have the MPs. And as well as that, one thing you always have to remember too, she now has a lot of big enemies sitting, big beasts of the Conservative Party. She has Boris Johnson sitting on the back benches. She's got Michael Gove sitting on the back benches.
Oh wait, hold on with Boris Johnson. She made something of a boast that she had stuck by Johnson, whereas Sunak had stabbed him in the back. So I think she would claim she was a Johnson loyalist.
But prime ministers, when they sit on the backbenches, the green-eyed jealousy of their successor always emerges. Thatcher couldn't resist it. Major has had a few goes. Tony Blair, and they do more damage within the party than maybe in the country, but they still damage big time. And see, what's the old thing? He who wields a knife mightn't wear the crown. But old prime ministers usually end up doing damage. But Truss is coming into it, and I think she's really coming into it'll be very, very interesting in the weeks ahead. But the other thing as well, there's a sort of denial that Brexit has been a disaster. In fact, one of the people we might be coming up to later on, Emily Maitlis, in one of her speeches, but we're not going to it now, but she basically said, this thing of trying on the BBC, trying to get somebody in to say, no, this sort of equivalent or balance. She says it's ridiculous. A lot of people just don't want to come on. And I think the Tory party is in denial. Dude, even the simple things about how many they can't get anybody for their hospitals, they can't get lorry drivers, the food on their shelves is going to, so that's going to have to be faced up to as well.
Are you impressed by the cut of her jib, Pat? I mean, does she look to you like a formidable woman?
No, Jude, she doesn't. Whatever you say about Thatcher and so on like that, and Boris Johnson, there's something about Liz Truss that doesn't fill me with confidence at all. Sunak, and Jude, I didn't watch it. I'm not going to claim that I'm an expert on them because I got so bored. I was watching the BBC debate. Sunak, every time he was asked a question, was on top of the brief, able to give answers. Liz Truss went all over the shop, and it seemed to be, making up as she went along. So I don't think she's particularly brilliant academically or politically.
Well, she went to Oxford or something, and did a
but
BE, philosophy, politics, and economics. But that doesn't necessarily translate into the real world. Some people are saying, some of the press are suggesting that the way she might establish her authority is to have an election.
Well, that would make sense, but right now, if the Labour Party cannot win an election now, they should pack in and go.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It'd be perfect for the Labour Party, but you wouldn't have that much confidence in them either. No. I don't know. I can't quite grasp. I hold no brief for Richie Sunak because his right wing is be damned. But how people can look at him, listen to him, then look at Liz Truss and listen to her and say, this is the one that's better. It just defies comprehension.
I could reverse that on you. When I listened to Theresa May and Boris Johnson, I said one, namely May, was telling the truth. She was sort of middle of the road. She was saying, here's the reality, and so on. And you knew just Boris Johnson was bullshitting. The 350 million a week to the North or the health, the National Health Service. All the other things, the stunts he pulled. And then when they won the election or the Brexit vote, he and Gove disappeared for a week. They hadn't a clue what it was all about. There was no policies. There was no here's the road we're going down. Here's the deal we're going to make with the EU. Nothing. Yeah. And you just knew he was a bullshit artist that he made up as he went along. And yet, hey Jude, he won a landslide.
Well, I think that part of the secret of a successful politician is energy. Johnson just oozed energy. He must have been tired at some stages, but he oozed energy. Sunak has the same kind of energy. In fact, I think in some ways he models himself on Johnson. He'll move his arms around and that kind of thing. But there is a very strong sense this guy will not grow tired. Whereas with Liz Truss, you feel that maybe a breath of wind would blow her away.
Maybe we'll be maybe all proved wrong.
Oh,
Jude, I suppose the other thing is she's still going to make a prime minister, so she's doing something right.
She is, but maybe it's because there's nothing else that people fancy, right? Your point too, of course, is that Sunak's skin color is wrong.
Yeah.
As far as the Tories are concerned, he's not the right color.
Yeah, Jude, you have to come to this thing, right? Years ago, a lot of the people who are voting Tory, the vote for this thing, the Conservative members, a lot of those guys are the old guys that were in the British Army and Major this and Captain that, and were out in India and so on. They're antecedents, and you know, those guys would have been. I remember the famous one about somebody said about Bill Clinton when Obama got elected. Just think back 20 years ago, this guy would have been serving us coffee.
Yeah. Oh God. You know, that's true. You look at some of these gammon. There's a Lord Earl of Shrewsbury at present is under the gun. I don't know if you saw that, because he's been using his influence. He's on some board that supplies, I don't know, maybe it was medical equipment. Oh, it was, it had to do with COVID. Disinfectants and sprays and stuff, and apparently he's not allowed to, but he has been using his position as a member of the House of Lords, a hereditary peer, to influence things, and he looks sort of shaky. But if you look at him, you can see how, you know, he goes back to the 14th century. This is where the earldom was won, and he is, as they say now, gammon. You know, that pink color. And he looks so sort of old authority. You'd imagine him in an oil painting looking down at you.
Rick Steen, the chef, was on Spain and he came out and we went to this restaurant that's owned by Lord McAlpine, who's the former treasurer. And Jude, if you wanted, you know, an old lord from Central Casting, yes, you know, the old marbles in the mouth, you know. And I thought, Jesus, is this pastiche or is this real?
Well, these guys, you see, these guys. Is this what they say, entitlement? I mean, it's very hard to get rid of entitlement once you have it. You know,
absolutely.
Say, why am I not entitled to this still? It was good enough for my ancestors in the 1400s.
Yes.
Why am I getting it? Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the press. You mentioned her name already, Emily Maitlis. Now, I'll tell you with Emily, I wouldn't have known exactly who she was until she interviewed Prince Andrew. I knew vaguely she was Newsnight. You know, if you showed me photographs, I'm not sure to be able to pick her out. So I have a feeling that the Prince Andrew thing was what made her. Would that be?
Yeah. Well, did you see? I was. Well, you were in the game too. I was a journalist, and I've now. I would claim to be slightly more aware of her name than that. But Jude, you're right. I wouldn't say she was top of my face recognition. You know, list. But I did recognize her. I used to watch Newsnight fairly regularly.
Yeah.
Now, not every night. I'm not going to claim that. Some night was boring as hell. But no, if Northern Ireland came up or the Brexit came up, I would watch it. And Emily was very good. But having said that, but take your point, Jude. She's not Jeremy Paxman. She wasn't.
No, but she is in a fairly interesting position now because she is claiming that the BBC rushed to confirm the government regarding Cummings. When Dominic Cummings, you know, did his famous trip, that the BBC was too keen to be on the side of the government, and that they would set up something whereby really they always had two conflicting views, even if one of those views was held by virtually nobody.
Yeah, that's sort of false equivalence thing. Dude, that's what I was referring to earlier. No, this thing about Brexit. She's Maitlis says there is absolutely no one in Britain who can come on and economically and say it's been a roaring success. And she says, yet every time the BBC has to do this balancing, that if one says it's been a great success, or one says it's an absolute failure, they have to throw it all to find somebody who says, oh, it's been a marvelous success. She says, it's like, the climate crisis. She says, if you get somebody on who says the climate crisis is real, they have to go and find somebody who says it isn't. She says, science, 95% of science says it's rubbish, that it is real.
Well, you have sympathy with that, though. I mean, supposing you're a producer, you do need to have a degree of disagreement in order to make the program sort of alive.
Yeah, probably, but not to the extent, Jude, that it's false balance. But anyway, back to the thing you originally said out about. Maitlis is sort of saying that the BBC has lost its nerve. But Jude, I wrote this down too, because these things are the chairman of the board is a pro-Brexit Tory donor, Richard Sharp, and she made Maitlis also said that there's an active conservative agent. I wrote that phrase down because that was very good. Called, I think he's a lord, but he's Robbie Gibb. He was a former director of communications for the Tory party, and he's on the board as well. But here's the real thing.
He's not one of the Gibbs brothers, no?
He's on the Bee Gees. But anyway, she said that the morning she did the monologue. I actually I saw that, Jude, the monologue she did the night of what do you call him, Dominic Clemens or Cummins, the time he went off to wherever it was, Tessie's side for over 200 miles. Anyway, the monologue she did that night was very fair and was very entertaining. She says, she really took the piss, But anyway, she says I got past the BBC's editorial, the team on Newsnight. The next morning, there's no problem. She says, but the minute she says the Tory party the Tory party spin doctor got on to the BBC, they rushed out an apology and said that her monologue had breached impartiality standards. And the thing about it was there was no she says, this is an organisation which is rigorous in its determination about impartiality. She says issued an apology without even talking to her, or as far as she could figure out, talking to the board, or not the board, the editor of Newsnight.
I can hardly believe my ears, Pat. You're saying that somebody came in, complained to BBC management, and therefore steps were taken? I can't. Surely that couldn't happen.
You're not thinking of a personal subject here, by the way.
Anyway, let's go back to Emily Maitlis. Do you think she's right? Do you
Absolutely.
think that the BBC is too soft, as it were, or too afraid of power or the establishment? And do you think it is a phony, fair forum?
Jude, the BBC has totally lost its nerve, totally, completely, and utterly lost its nerve, and everybody can see it. Like, Jude, one of the big things, Jude, when I was out of the paper, if somebody had to complain about a journalist, as long as the journalist had done the best they could, my attitude was like, F off, type thing. I'm not
the same thing as fuck off, is it?
Yeah, it's the same thing. And the rule was that you had somebody's back as long as you knew the person had done the best they could, that they were honest, they were fair, and all the rest. Look, Jude Collins could come around and roar and shout in my office, and I would say, young O'Donnell out there, or whatever his name is, or her name is, talk to the other person. If you've got a problem with it, that's your problem, not mine, etc., etc. Emily Maitlis said what happened was the Tory party rang up. There was no problem with it until the Tory party rang up, and then the BBC rushed out an apology. And by the way, they're still sticking to this ridiculous thing that it did breach standards, and we're sticking by our decision. There was no problem until the Tory party rang up.
Yeah. Let's take this in general, Pat. Say over the terms of the Troubles. Do you think the BBC reported reasonably well?
To an extent, yeah. But do you remember I always contradict myself because I think of someone else. Remember Death on the Rock?
Yeah.
After the Gibraltar shootings.
Yeah. Wasn't the BBC, mind you?
No, it was Time Tees or something.
Yeah, that's right.
They lost their franchise after that. Thatcher made sure they lost their franchise. That had a chilling effect on a lot of broadcasters. And, you're either with us or against us, sort of. No, this is the Tory party thing. So I think public service broadcasting has almost become nearly like Sky News. They're all in the pockets of the powerful. The days of standing up to power are long gone.
Well, I'm trying to think when it was that they stood up to power. I would have said that during the Troubles, the BBC was fairly firmly on the side of the government.
Absolutely. That goes without saying.
The British Broadcasting Corporation, so I suppose they have to be. But they do make a play of being an impartial force, despite the fact that they are a state Broadcasting Corporation.
Aye, but one of my pet subjects is this whole, because I'm a journalist, and the coverage of the Israeli and the Palestinians. And I'm just throwing this on as a 2-second thing. The BBC, Jude, Israel is clear. There's only one group with an army and navy and an air force. There's only one group subjugating and oppressing one people, namely the Israelis are doing. Yet there's always this. Oh, the terrorists are the Palestinians. You're going, Jude, the unfairness of that portrayal is ridiculous.
Well, I think that's there must be there's some things you can do because, well, in my experience with the BBC is this, that much of the censoring that happened in terms of programming was self-censoring.
Yeah.
You in the place there was you learned to think certain ways, and you find yourself thinking those ways without even being consciously aware of it. So I think a lot of the reactions and presentations of events were sort of in the culture. So it took somebody with a very strong mind to be able to think outside that, and then even stronger to be able to act outside that. And the chances were they'd lose their job. If you think back to the Troubles, I can't think of a single program that was made by the BBC. Now, I'm open to correction, but I can't think of a single program during the Troubles made by the BBC that would have presented something critical of the government, like, say, Thames' death on the rock.
But you're no, you're 100% right. I don't apologize. I'm open to correction as well. But here, you just struck a chord in my memory there. Remember, there was a great program called Real Lives.
Oh, yes.
Mark McGuinness and Gregory Campbell.
Yes.
The real problem with that program was not editorial. It was the fact that Martin McGuinness came across as being reasonable, decent, and so on. And that was not the sort of narrative that the government wanted out. They wanted out, this is a mindless thug terrorist, two-headed monster. And what it was here was this very normal, decent, mass-going Catholic fella who was brought up in a society that made him the way he was. And Jude, that was not the story that they wanted out there. So Jude, there's your, if you want a parallel or a story to say when it was the last. And by the way, a lot of BBC people that time lost their nerve about that program as well.
But that
program didn't go out for years.
That's exactly. It didn't at the time. I remember at the time about the BBC, people were saying, "Oh, the irony of Martin McGuinness being in a program called Real Lives."
Yeah.
The implication was he had taken life. I don't think their record really is all that good. I find Emily Maitlis very courageous to come out and say the things she's saying. There are those.
Hold on, Jude. She's very courageous after she left the BBC.
I'm going to say that while she was there, she was
part of that
establishment.
Well, you know the old one. You can't shit in your own nest. And I can understand that point. So fair play here at least for saying it now.
Yeah. Well, it's very rarely that you hear somebody of standing coming out. Incidentally, just to go back very briefly to the Prince Andrew interview, I didn't think she particularly savaged him or was very sharp with him. I thought she was very, almost not gentle, but certainly she wasn't roughing him up. But he managed to dig several holes and jump into them.
But she was very clever. It was almost forensic. She gave him enough. The clever thing. Give somebody enough rope and let them hang themselves. And that's exactly what she done.
I think that was the case, all right.
I'm going to get pizza at Woking or somewhere.
I'd like to have a few more people like that, because traditionally the great journalists Robert Fisk and these people tend to act outside the BBC rather than within it. Exactly. Anyway, Emily's now got a podcast, of course, to promote. Along with who is it?
John Supple.
John Supple. So she maybe is, whipping up a bit of publicity, and I'd say the chances are high that a lot more people now listen.
No, Jude, I watched a good part of that as a McTaggart lecture at the Edinburgh Festival. It's very, very good. Really, genuinely good. Yeah. She's asking some great questions. Sorry, Jude.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think that her and Supple will be a threat to you and me? I mean, in terms of popularity.
Okay. Right.
Okay. In your dreams, big boy.
In your dreams.
Okay. Does the name Amelia Shearer ring a bell for you, Pat?
It does. God bless
Now,
her.
this is not Alan Shearer's sister. I want to make this clear. This, as far as I know, has nothing to do with Alan Shearer. The story,
you were reading the Guardians as well.
It was in the Guardian, yeah. This woman Amelia is a policewoman, and she was off duty. And as we all do when we're off duty, we sometimes have a few jars. And Amelia had a few jars. And then she went into a place called Urban Outfitters in Cleveland. Now, this is Cleveland in North England, I guess. And I'll let you tell the rest of the story, Pat.
I thought it was great. She asked the attendant or whoever, the person there, does this shop have a toilet? And was told no. She says, oh, excuse me 1 second. And she went into the changing room and came out again. And the attendant noticed a pool of water.
Of a yellow hue.
Of a yellow hue, yes. And Emily left, not Emily, Amelia left the shop. Now, the shop attendants were fuming, so they called the police. And they must have maybe some sort of camera, and they followed, and they found Amelia. Amelia denied totally, etc., that anything had happened and so on. But here's the thing. There was basically conclusive evidence. They had to close the changing rooms. They had to bring in somebody, and it took them 390 quid or something to get the carpets cleaned or whatever from the smell of the urine, so on. But here's the thing: the cop, the chief constable, Mark Webster or something, I think his name is. Yeah. He said the problem is she lied to the cops when she was apprehended.
Oh, did she?
And he said that is serious, because he says if she's ever given evidence in a case, all this, can we trust your evidence here? Because you've lied in the past, haven't you? And he says that's any defense can throw that. He says basically as a cop she's sort of dead in the water. Now she was there was a disciplinary inquiry, and they sort of stopped or stepped back from firing her, but her career. But the whole thing revolves around the fact that she lied when she was apprehended. Now, if she had told the truth, maybe she'd have been okay.
Yeah, well, I don't know if she would or not.
I don't know either.
I don't know if there's a law against urinating in a changing room. But tell us this, Pat. Did you ever, as a young man, relieve yourself against the wall of a public building?
Absolutely.
Me too. But I'll tell you something. Yeah. I think this is maybe not exclusively Irish. Maybe it goes over to England as well. But there's a famous photograph of the guy urinating into the at the gate of a parochial house, I think, an orange man. Have you seen that one?
I think somewhere in my brain, I think I vaguely. But you'd hold on. Hold on now. Wait a minute. Let's get this clear. There's a big difference between at night on a dark street and going up a wee alleyway, right? And I think nearly 90% of us can claim they have done that.
And being a man, Pat.
Yeah, but hold on. But if I went in to a shop today at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, whatever time it is now, and went into and I'm just absolutely urinating against the wall, dude, that is significantly different.
Yeah. But she was very, very drunk at the time, I think, because her and her mates were laughing their legs off. But and we all do things when we're a bit drunk that we under normal circumstances.
Jude, we can't finish up without talking about Robert Troy.
I was just you took words out of my mouth. Say something wise about Robert Troy.
What do you make it? We had a wee talk about him on Monday.
Yeah.
And he was getting backing from the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach, and he's gone. So you tell me.
I'm not one bit surprised, because it's exactly the same sort of thing that the former Secretary of State for here was involved in, and I've forgotten his name again. You told me before.
Owen Patterson.
I interviewed him actually at Hillsborough Castle one time, and he struck me as being extremely stupid. But anyway, Robert Troy owned something like 11 buildings, was it?
11 houses, apparently, yeah.
And he forgot. Did he forget all 11?
He owned several of them.
Forgot to register them. And you see, actually, this is really bad news for both Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, not because this guy did this, although partly that, but these guys stood by him. Leo Varadkar and Neil Martin did the good thing and stood by him, just as Boris Johnson did with Owen Paterson. Only I think on our scale, it's even more glaring omission. And I'd say that's something that will haunt Leo Varadkar and Neil Martin, because it's got to do with buildings, and people think buildings, homes, people can't get homes. This guy's got 11 bloody places, and these guys are sticking up for him. I think he's going to lose his seat.
He could well do. Jude, here's the thing. I think the two guys, the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach, didn't read the room right. Jude, there's real anger out there. There are thousands on waiting lists, thousands who can't get mortgages. This guy had 11 houses, and whether deliberately or unfortunately or whatever term you want to use, he didn't do his declaration of interest right. And all those families out there who can't get a home, saying this guy's 11, and the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach are standing up for him. The anger out there is real, and eventually that got through.
Bad idea. I was going to ask a question. I can't think what it is. Oh yes, if you had a chance and you were near any of those 11 properties and it was dark at night, would you be tempted to relieve yourself?
Absolutely.
Me too. We're twin souls. Okay, Pat. Thank you very much.
Good luck.